Hello and welcome, guys, to another episode of Carbon Market News, the place where we talk about carbon markets, about how to invest and how to make money in the carbon markets. I just got done with an amazing interview with Guy Dickinson, the CEO of Betacarbon. His company provides a solution to investing directly in the Australian carbon markets via the blockchain. As always, guys, if you enjoy content like this, then please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, check out the Facebook group and the Discord server. And now let's get started with the interview. Okay, hello and welcome, guys, to another episode of Carbon Market Insider, where we bring you people inside the carbon market. Today we have Guy Dickinson. He is the founder and CEO of Betacarbon. He and his company won the 2022 People's Choice Emerging FinTech of the Year award, as well as the Rising Star of the Year 2022 award with his company Betacarbon. So welcome with me, Guy Dickinson from Betacarbon. Guy, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm excellent. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Perfect. So let's start with, tell me a bit about yourself. How did you get into all of that?
Yeah, good question. So look, I had a very long background in trading financial markets and liquid markets, and this asset class has been really hard to get into for a long time. So we spent the best part of 6 months doing a lot of investigative work, and that was kind of because I had I guess a bit of a privileged position of having access to markets and intelligence around markets because of my position at HSBC as a trader and head of the markets business there, and that allowed me to very quickly move up the curve around what were the blocking points to this market in Australia specifically, because we had a market which had only a few people really trading these ACCUs amongst themselves, and an ACCU is Australian Carbon Credit Unit, just to put it out there to start with. So I'll use the term ACCU quite a bit. And I really like the idea of trading it just from an asset class perspective. It seemed, if we look at other compliance markets, Europe was trading at about $80 at the time, all in Aussie dollar terms. New Zealand was 40. At the time, the Australian market was 20. It's now at around $30, give or take, depending on what type of carbon credit we're talking about within the market. And we sort of saw an opportunity there. But it quickly morphed into something bigger, and I wanted to use the power of the people to help drive a bigger demand pool for this asset class and really open it up, because everyone is affected by pollution. So why shouldn't we have some sort of say around how we can influence that?
So now you have to explain, how does your company plan on solving this issue that people don't have access to the carbon markets?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big issues are really access. Access comes in a couple of forms. So to open an account in Australia, there's a long process with the clean energy regulator. So it's all a compliance market, i.e. it's run by the government, and government institutions do the onboarding. That process is really blown out to several months, upwards of 6 months in some cases. Then once you're onboarded, you can now hold a carbon credit. But you can't buy one yet because you'll need to go through an onboarding process with wholesale brokers. Their usual first trade is $500,000 to prove that you're wholesale. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know how many people want to have a first trade in a new asset class for $500,000. And that really was a bit of a blocker for 99.5% of the population.
Yes.
But we knew that people are willing to try new asset classes in new delivery vehicles. So Betacarbon is effectively facing the market, and we buy carbon credits, and we then tokenize those carbon credits. For 1 ton, we create 1,000 kilograms. And at the point of minting, that carbon is removed from Betacarbon's asset pool, and it's moved into a separate vehicle. So it's not our asset to play around with. It's still, what that does is mean that the token is notionally backed by carbon. Now, there's an important distinction to make here, is that it's still a live carbon credit. So it's not a carbon credit which has been retired and put on chain, as opposed to some of the other vehicles out there. And what that means effectively is it has a live value that can't be questioned, because no one's taken credit for it as an offset to this date. Now, the mechanism that we've created is for everybody in the market, they can purchase the token to get price exposure to the ACCU market, the underlying institutional ACCU market. And it won't be a perfect relation, but it will be close, depending on, which carbon units are sitting in the portfolio. And I think that, it's important to note that if someone goes and searches up what's the price of an ACCU, they'll see a price that's probably $29 today. They may see another one that says HIR, which is a nature-based credit, it's about $34. But this portfolio has credits between $20, $28 all the way up to $52. So the price of the Betacarbon token will reflect broadly the underlying portfolio, but also has to take into account demand and supply of the token itself.
Yes. So to simplify, it's basically you're trying to replicate a official ACCU credit on the blockchain. Would that be correct?
That's very correct. And you simplified it nicely, but I guess the point is it isn't a simple process in the background. Yes. There's been a great deal of work, a very open book approach with the market, with regulators, etc. We at Betacarbon has a second token for wholesale customers, i.e. someone who they meet the criteria of that $500,000. They can actually retire the carbon. If they wanted to bring the tokens to me, I can go and do it in the registry on their behalf. And we have a license to do that. So it's ended up being a hybrid financial product. And it's also not a financial product in terms of people who just want the price exposure. But if they do want to retire the credit because they meet the wholesale definition, then there is a way for companies or wholesale investors to retire the credits, expunge the value, but get the benefit of the retirement for various reasons.
Mm-hmm. So
I think just what I might do is just highlight the fact that by owning a Betacarbon token, you haven't offset anything. Mm-hmm. It's an exposure to the price.
Yes. Because a lot of people ask me on my channel and in the groups, how can we participate in the compliance markets around the world? And like you said, it's really hard for a retail investor, for somebody like me, to participate on the compliance market price. And I think what your company makes it possible for retail investors to speculate basically on that price to participate in the carbon markets. And also the big difference I saw, your carbon token price is actually linked to something. 99.9% of all the tokens out there is just pure, it's whatever the token price is, but your is really like backed by a physical asset that is very transparent, that is not some credit somewhere in, I don't know, in the rainforest of Bolivia where nobody ever goes and nobody ever checks on if the credit actually exists.
It is and I think that's an important point because, the research we've done is people want to know where the credits are happening. Domestic carbon credits for domestic use cases make the most sense.
Yes.
So if you really step back from that, am I that involved with a Myanmar cook stove project in Sydney? No, I'm not. But if it's 4 hours away in the country and I know it, and I could go there and see it with my own eyes, that gives it credibility. And on top of that, the government has verified the credit. These are really important distinctions because not only does digital assets often have a cloud over the top of it, but so does carbon. And so it's really important that you step into this with a view for a long-term trade. This shouldn't be an asset class you punch around intraday. This is an asset class where you go, okay, the country's on a transition journey. A year ago, it wasn't. We had a different government who didn't care. Today, great timing. We just enshrined into law a 43% reduction for 2030 against 2005 levels. I mean, what better time to be actually having this interview where we've enshrined in law that we have to cut emissions over the next 7 years to a significant point. Now, the carbon market is there to influence how companies transition. And that's really an important distinction here because other carbon tokens really have a lot of FOMO built into them. We're not here to do that. We're here to give you a representation of a domestic carbon market that allows you price exposure to it. So for me, I see amazing potential, not only from a supply perspective, but this is really about incentivizing more projects, the types of projects people want to buy, and really making sure that the portfolio that backs the token notionally is really a portfolio that appeals to people who purchase the token as well.
Yes, I totally agree. Okay, so given all that you have achieved right now with your company, where do you see like the biggest struggles going forward?
Oh, well, look, I don't think there's, I think that maybe I've upset some of the incumbents. You know, that's normal. Maybe I haven't. Maybe they're very happy because they're sitting on a lot of carbon projects and they'll just sell into a higher market. For me, I think the biggest challenges are moving through regulatory landscapes as this changes. I think I've built Betacarbon for full regulation. I've not, you know, I've been out there from the beginning, making sure we have an Australian financial services license as a business. So we already operate under a certain type of construct, regulatory construct. Now, certain products within our business don't require a license. Some do, but we have a license, and that means we operate at a certain level. So we are ready for that kind of regulation. I think as it relates to us stepping abroad and looking at this in other compliance markets and other high quality voluntary markets, because we do have a live model kind of system here that we know works. That's going to be a challenge. You look at the States, some really interesting stats is they have a 50% NDC commitment. Australia has a 43% NDC commitment. If you go to California, that's a market which really has about a 98% coverage ratio, which means for every ton of pollution, there's a carbon allowance or a carbon credit effectively matching it. So if you create a lower supply of carbon credits, that will influence the price, and the price will influence how you pollute. In Australia, that number's 4%. So California's fantastic, 98%. Australia's 4%. So we have a huge growth in this market to come. America outside California is 7%. You know, so there is so much, there's really a lot of synergies between how Australia and the US will push forward into the transition journey. But you know, you can't be under any illusions that the United States is not really a one regulatory construct like we have in Australia. It's going to be 40 different programs and management with regulators that you have to really carefully choose which markets you step into from a regulatory perspective. These are important transition tools, and you need to make sure you're future-proofing your model. I think that's the main challenge.
So you already answered my next question, which was how do you see the carbon market going forward in Australia and worldwide? So you would basically say it's going to grow. It's maybe going to be a bit slow and steady, or do you think it's going to maybe like go to a point and then accelerate, or how would you see that exactly? How would you predict it?
Well, I predict it. I don't want to be too predicty. I traded foreign exchange for 25 years. I can tell you where it was going in 4 hours, but anyone who tells you they know where it's going to be in 2 months is lying.
Yeah.
For me, I think we need to look at each country in isolation. So for me, the concept of a global carbon price is nonsense. It's nice to think about. It's an easy thing for people to understand, but it's nonsense. What I mean by that is if you look at the European scheme, it works. It absolutely works. And the price got up to 98 euro. It's dropped 28% in the last 14 days. These are big moves. But in reality, they're actually on a decline. They're starting to reduce their carbon credit pool so that the price keeps going up because they've brought so many companies into compliance. So I don't even want to look at Europe. Europe's kind of done the work. It's 5 or 6 years ahead of Australia and the US. The place to put your focus is the countries that haven't developed it yet, because they need to create that influence. So I don't see a lot of, I think countries like New Zealand show Australia the way. They now are trading at $85. It used to be $10 more than the Australian carbon credit 2 years ago, and now it's 2.5x. You know, these are big changes, and they've put a cap on it at somewhere between $165 and $215 for their most recent movement. So countries, as they move into more compliance regimes, more ETS type products, they are going to be more domestically focused. Now, the concept for me, if I'm going to give you a prediction, is that it's not a price prediction. It's the fact that the voluntary carbon market is so nascent and so small, and the actual quality of credits that people will be willing to buy is even a 10% sliver of that. You know, literally $300 million worth of credits really are available that corporates would want to stand behind on their brand. Some of them use cheap credits now. We've seen multiple stories where that has brought brands undone, and they will really care about the quality of the product. So for me, I want to deal in markets which can scale quickly. I think regulatory markets can do that. That's not to say there won't be a really top quality layer of voluntary carbon markets which will become compliance markets by proxy, but the 90% of voluntary carbon units that exist today, and I'm not saying they're not going to change and increase in their quality, if you will. A lot of the carbon credits that exist today where other tokens are playing are not great credits. And so at the end of the day, it was questionable whether anyone was going to buy them in the first place.
Yes, I totally agree. Okay, perfect. Betacarbon is not live yet for retail investors. Am I correct with that?
So we have a wait list, and we should be opening up to wait list at the end of next week. That's the plan at this point, and they'll put more pressure on the team. You can buy it. You have to buy it OTC, so it'll just be over the counter, over the phone, and you'll be in a MetaMask wallet at the moment. We have a minimum 10,000 Aussie limit on that. At the moment, you'd have to be an Australian citizen or a New Zealand citizen to buy it. But there is a price on Uniswap. It's available if you want. Various people have bought the tokens and putting markets out there. So it's USDC versus BCAU.
Okay.
If you go and search on Etherscan and Uniswap, and I do, I encourage people to watch our journey, but it certainly doesn't stop in Australia. We have plans around other compliance markets, other regulatory markets, helping the top end of that voluntary carbon market move into more domestic plays. I think the space is super young. If someone's looking at this YouTube video right now, they're ahead of the game. They're way ahead of the game, because we know that 97% of the population doesn't really know what a footprint is yet, or even what does that mean for their investment portfolio. It really is sky's the limit in terms of what this is going to look like in 5 years' time. But the world's woken up, that's for sure.
Yes, so for everybody, I will put all the details and links in the description below so that people can find Betacarbon easily. I think it's betacarbon.au, if I'm not mistaken.
For the website?
For the website, yeah.
Oh, it's just betacarbon.com.
.com, sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Perfect. Guy, anything that I didn't ask that I should have asked?
I don't think so. I'm good at digressing, so I probably covered a lot of stuff off.
Yes.
What I would say is I'd love to have a follow-up.
Yes, me too.
With this channel, because for me, it's really important to let your audience know what projects are popular, what do brands want to stand behind, because that'll really affect the types of carbon credits in terms of methodologies that they may want to buy, because at the end of the day, this is all about data and personal choice. And that's really what Betacarbon is trying to do, is say you can control your own portfolio as it relates to different carbon tokens. Betacarbon really wants to represent where the price is. We don't want this to be something which is uber speculatory. Of course, it is in a way, shape or form, because you're playing in a regulated compliance market. However, we want it to represent the full value of the carbon in general.
Perfect. Great. I love your project. I would also be open if you want to do it more regularly. We can do that. That would be awesome. I mean, definitely,
absolutely.
Definitely do a follow-up, but I really enjoy talking to you. And I think my audience will also enjoy all the information that you give out, given you're very into this space and like doing hands-on everything that all the people are just hearing from, in theory from other compliance markets. How does it look? How does it feel? I think that's really great. Okay, Guy.
I appreciate you putting the time into educating us all. That's excellent.
Thank you. I know you're short on time, so you probably have to run. So let's wrap this up here. And I say thank you very much for your time. And like I said, let's do it again and let's keep in touch.
My pleasure. Have a great one. Cheers.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Bye.
See ya.
Thank you guys for watching. As always, I want to know, what do you guys think about Betacarbon? Do you want to invest in the Australian carbon markets? Where do you think this is all going? Leave your comments in the comment section and I will see you in the next video.